Hi, my name is Sebastián, and today I'm going to talk about wage convergence in the European Union, which is a case study for the class of International Economic Affairs. So, welcome to this little presentation. So, I'm going to get started. So, before talking about wage convergence in the European Union, which is the main topic here, we're just going to talk about, first of all, what is international labor mobility. And this is really important. It's basically the pattern which labor forces from different countries follow from one country to another. Usually, this is driven by the desire of better wages to make more money. This is pretty common in many Latin American countries, specifically Mexico and some other Latin American, that are in search of better wages, and they usually go to the United States for the for this miracle to happen to them, to get more money for their work, basically. The definition in the book we are reading says that this is the international economic forces that drive the desired migration of workers across borders and the short run consequences of those migration flows. It's basically the desire of humans, of laboring humans, to get more money out of their jobs. Okay, so let's look at it more into detail. Here we can see a graph which can seem a little bit complicated at first hand, but it's really not. We can just focus on the x-axis in the bottom part, and that is the total labor force in the world, or well, maybe in two countries, just to make it simpler. So, the total world labor force, it's going to be divided into two, into home employment, people who are working in their home countries, and foreign employment, people who are working in foreign countries. Pretty straightforward, but yes. So, the first level, the level of home employment, goes from O to L2, and the level of foreign employment goes to L1 to O with this little mark on it. So, let's just suppose that the level of foreign employment increases. This is that people from home, workers from home, go to another country to look for jobs. So, this is the movement of workers among countries. This is going to be creating a new equilibrium, and we will see why. So, as foreign employment increases, in the first hand, people are going to go to another country to look for jobs because they are usually offering better wages. So, what happens? The foreign employment increases, and the wages in this foreign country tend to go down as the foreign market gets more stacked. There's more people willing to work, so the wages are going to get down. And by the same effect, in home, where people are leaving, the supply of jobs is going to be less. So the wages are going to be pushed up forward. So we will reach a new equilibrium between these two countries and the marginal product of labor. Now, let's now get into the case study. The real question here, does this really happen? Does this model hold? Yes or no? So we'll look into it. So the case study is wage convergence in the European Union. We can just focus firstly on the convergence word. What does this mean? That there must be some point of equilibrium between wages. So in the case of Europe, this big economic area has been growing from the 90s till today. It has expanded, particularly to the east. We have new countries in this area, like the Czech Republic, Estonia, Cyprus, Latvia, Lithuania, a lot of countries. And this will cause migration from some countries to other countries, particularly from the east countries to the western countries. So, does the model hold? Does the ideas of this model apply to the reality? And the answer is yes. We need to take a look at the graph, but the answer is yes. What happened in 1997? Well, the ratio or the relationship between wages of manufacturing workers of Eastern Europe against Western Europe was 14%. That means that if a worker, if a manufacturing worker made $100 a month in a Western country in Europe, then the same worker would make just $14 in 1 month if he was working in the Eastern Europe. So that relationship was not that nice. But since the European Union is expanding, the wages are actually getting higher home and they're getting lower in the foreign countries, as I explained earlier. So we can see this in the new relationship. In 2015, the relationship or the ratio between Eastern Europe and Western Europe manufacturing workers' wages has almost doubled from 14% to 27%. This is the exact example of how wages in the foreign countries are going to get lower because of the higher demand of jobs, and the wages at home in the Western Europe are going to get up, are going to be pushed upwards because the supply of labor is going to be less since people are going to other countries. So yes, to answer the question shortly and briefly, yes, the model holds, and we can even see a specific McDonald's workers trend, which I will get into it just by the end of the presentation. But it's just to point out that this is a really abstract way to see it because there are a lot of different workers, a lot of different jobs, and the McDonald's industry basically helps to see pretty straightforward that specific jobs that take almost the same skills are actually getting these effects of the international labor mobility. So yes. Well, finally, we can just see some interesting topics, which is the side effects of immigration in countries like the United States. We can see a lot of policies against immigration in the United States. Sometimes they tend to get even more intense, like into racism, but well, that's another topic. Um, and the characteristics of the jobs immigrants take. In the case of the United States, um, the jobs immigrants take are not really that high qualified jobs. They're not the same as the native foreign people's jobs are. So this is why we have the MAC wages. The MAC wages is just a way to measure the wages of the people who work at McDonald's, which basically do the same job in every country where there is a McDonald's. So we can see, for example, in the last slide, that this relationship has actually grown. So, well, those are some interesting topics. We talked about how international labor mobility affects labor markets and how wages tend to move. They can either go upwards or downwards, but they will reach a new equilibrium at some point. And well, that will be it, and thank you very much.